I'm going to walk through a typical customer journey. How do customers adopt our technology, and what do they do with it? What are the typical use cases they deploy Alkira solution for, and how do they use it? Again, we'll go through all of the day one operations, setting up, building out the topology, and then in the next section, we're going to cover the day two operations. So stay tuned for that. Before I talk about what the customers do, let me talk about what Alkira does. So Alkira provides this cloud area networking solution, which is network infrastructure as a service. And network infrastructure as a service means that Alkira is providing that service. And as part of the service, there are multiple points of presence, what we call cloud exchange points. These cloud exchange points essentially provide you the ability to connect your cloud workloads, connect your on-prem locations, and build end-to-end connectivity. Once you build that end-to-end connectivity, you can run network services in that. As more and more applications go to the cloud, you want to have the ability to also run the network services in the cloud. And so whether it's firewalls, whether it's load balancers, DDI services, so on and so forth. And we'll show you some of this in the demo. And more importantly, you need visibility, you need governance, you need a policy orchestration that controls which traffic is allowed, which traffic is not allowed, which traffic needs to go through a firewall, so on and so forth, who's allowed to talk to whom. So that is what cloud area networking is, and we'll go talk about the use cases. So let's talk about typical use cases. So we bucketize these use cases into connect, which essentially you can connect anything into the fabric, unify, and scale. In terms of connect, there are multiple different ways you can bring your on-premise network into the Alkira fabric. You can bring it through SD-WAN. You can connect your branches and campuses using SD-WAN vendor of your choice, and we integrate into SD-WAN. You can bring it through standards-based IPsec. Let's say you have a third-party partner who has a different SD-WAN network, and you don't want to connect to that SD-WAN network. You can just connect your third-party partner into the Alkira fabric using IPsec. For higher throughput connectivity options, we support direct connect, express route, and so on and so forth for directly connecting your data center into a high throughput connectivity into Alkira. And we also support remote user connectivity. Again, as I talk about various options, and as I do the demo, you'll see that for every service that we offer, there are multiple options that customers have. So for example, remote access. Customers can leverage, if they're a Palo Alto shop, they can deploy a VM series and consume Global Protect and connect their Global Protect clients into that VM series. Or they can use Alkira's remote access service and directly land into the Alkira's remote access service and connect their users into the applications that they need to. So there's multiple different options that customers can use to connect into that. So we talked about on-prem connectivity. Now let's talk about cloud connectivity. Customers, all they need to do is pick a cloud exchange point wherever their applications are, go in and discover all of their applications, and Alkira automates all of the connectivity required from those host VPCs and from those applications into the transit architecture or into the Alkira fabric. Alkira fabric is fully segmented, so customers can break it down into multiple different segments and essentially run a fully isolated segment from one line of business to other line of business. And resiliency and DR, super important as more and more mission critical applications go into the cloud. So high availability is built into the solution. Every aspect of connectivity that Alkira provides is fully redundant, and it's built into the solution. And on top of that, if customer wants DR, let's say I want to have my application in AWS as my primary cloud, but I want to have in the same region, I want to have a DR site in Azure. You could do that. Or you can keep the same application in AWS, but have a DR as another region of AWS. You could do that as well. So cross-cloud DR, cross-region DR, is all available as a capability on our solution as well. Once you connect everything, that's when you want to unify all of the connectivity, right? Whether it's single cloud, whether it's multi-cloud, whether it's segmentation for compliance reasons, you can define your connectivity, you can define your models of policies, and you can dictate how the traffic will flow through the network. Since Alkira provides a data plane architecture, all of the traffic flows through the Alkira's data plane. The policies are implemented on Alkira data plane to fine-grain control how the traffic will flow through the network. And then there are some advanced capabilities, like we automatically detect overlapping IPs. That's a huge problem as more and more applications go to the cloud. An app developer would go and create a VPC or create a VNet, not knowing what else is out there. Maybe as another group in the same line of business has already done the same VNet or a same CIDR block for a different VPC. And Alkira will automatically detect that and help you overcome some of the net complexities and net use cases that you need to deploy.
Just on the IP address issue, do you integrate with any existing IPAM solutions or provide IPAM functionality?
That's right. We do integrate with Infoblocks, as well as we have our own IP address management and NAT detection and overlapping IP address detection. Yes. Okay. And then we have another demo, another session later on today where we're going to walk you through infrastructure as code and automation, because everything that you see in the UI is available through APIs, is available through Terraform and other automation capabilities, and we're going to walk you through that as well. Okay, so let's go to the demo. What I'm going to do is start with a very simple customer use case where we're going to start with the empty network. We're going to pick a few regions, build micro and macro segmentation, and leverage the cloud backbone. And I'm going to walk you through how a customer would have done otherwise if they were not doing it through Alkira, and what's the difference in terms of how simple our solution is. Once we build the basic infrastructure, then we are going to connect single and multiple clouds, multiple regions, right? AWS, Azure, Google, what have you. Alkira supports AWS, Azure, Google, Oracle, all of the major clouds out there today. Once you do cloud connectivity, these workloads need to go to the internet. So we're going to add an internet exit. Once we add internet exit, the security team gets involved, and everyone wants to secure that internet exit. So we're going to deploy a firewall, and we are going to connect to on-prem locations. So we're going to extend our Alkira network to on-prem locations using SD-WAN, using IPsec, using a variety of different methods. And then we're going to apply a layer of policy that allows you to control how the traffic flows. And you will have full visibility into the network. So when the user logs in for the first time, they're going to see the map of the globe and all of the locations where Alkira's network infrastructure service is available. So this is what we call cloud exchange points. And in this particular example, I've pre-selected 2 cloud exchange points, one in US East, one in US West. As soon as you select 2 cloud exchange points, you have this 2 empty shells that you see. Now, they may look empty, but what they provide you is a lot of underlying connectivity. So in this case, each of the cloud exchange point has 4 areas that you need to focus on. The bottom footer has 3 dots. Each dot represents a completely isolated layer 3 VRF-based isolation. So in this particular case, I have a segment which is called Corp IT. I have another segment which is called Line of Business 1. And then I have a third segment that is called Line of Business 2. So not only Alkira's infrastructure is multi-tenanted, but when a customer gets their view, they can create multiple segments and they can be multi-tenanted as well. So I, as a customer of Alkira, can create multiple different segments for my line of businesses and for my corporate IT. So that's the footer of every single CXP. Then you have 3 vertical bars. The left one is for connecting users and sites. So essentially on-prem connectivity into the Alkira fabric. So again, there are multiple different ways to connect, and we'll go through some of them. We'll build out this topology, but this is just an example of what all you can connect into. On the right side are the cloud connectors. So I talked about AWS, Azure, Google, Oracle. You can connect workloads from any of these clouds. You can bring in the internet exit at this location, and you can stitch the entire network together. And then in the middle are a variety of different services. So these are some of the firewall and DDI services. There are many more services on the right side through the actions and policies that you can control. And now we added two particular cloud exchange points. So in one click, when I added two cloud exchange points, in a parallel world, what would have happened is, let's talk about building a colo. We talked about this being a virtual colo equivalent. So a customer would have to go into a colocation provider, get into two contracts at two different locations, get cages, get switching, routing, security stack, get circuits there, connect all of this together, get connectivity to the cloud, and segment all of that. All of this was done in 2 clicks here. By doing this 2 clicks, customer got all of this that we talked about building it. Just doing that would have taken customer a few months. Now you have that in 2 clicks. Now that we build 2 virtual colocation type of facilities in US West and US East, let's build some connectivity. Most common use case is customers will start with adding a workload from a single cloud. So let's say my app developers have deployed a few applications in AWS in US West. So I'm going to say add AWS. And I as a network admin can put in my network credentials or AWS credentials. I can put in an IAM role. I can put in a key value pair. In this particular case, I already added my credentials, so I'm going to leverage that. And I'm going to pick Northern California. These are all the AWS regions. And then you'll see that Alkira has gone and discovered all of the cloud workloads out there in that region for that account. I'm going to just pick a couple of them. So let's just pick this one. So when I pick that demo script VPC, you'll see that Alkira has really discovered all of the network and security construct. Again, super focused on networking. So VPC name, VPC ID, CIDR blocks, subnets, route tables, so on and so forth. Everything is discovered that's running in the cloud. All a customer has to do is select if they want DR capability or not. The HA is part of it. So Alkira discovered everything. All the customer has to do is go in, select the size here, different types of connectivity, select the segment that I wanted. Let's put it in CorpNet because that's where and then I can say this is a shared services segment. So I want to talk about here about segments and groups. Segments are completely isolated layer 3 VRF networks. A group is a micro segment where you can apply a policy on a group as opposed to an individual connector. So I can have a shared services group and say who all can access the shared services. I can have within a line of business, I can have a prod workloads and dev workloads. And I can say prod workloads can access this, dev workloads cannot access this, so on and so forth. And then we have a concept called billing tag. Extremely powerful that our customers love it. And this is because customers pay us for all of the networking capabilities. We break it down based on these billing tags, and the central IT team does not need to become a cost center anymore. Leveraging this billing tags, they can actually charge back to their line of business on whatever they use. So in this particular case, this is a Corp IT application. I'm going to use that.
Can I ask a question about the select sizing?
Sure.
Of this? So you hit the drop down. We didn't really get to see what the sizes are. So what is the maximum bandwidth that I can connect to a CXP?
So there is 2 levels of sizing in the solution. One is when you select a CXP, you can pick a size, and size goes all the way from 100 meg to 10 gig, 20 gig, 40 gig. And so that's the size of the CXP. And then there is for every VPC or every connector you add, you can define a size.
Okay.
And so in this particular case, I'm saying I want a medium sized connector. And so think of in the hardware world, think of there is a chassis. So there's a backplane capacity, and then there is a line card. So there's line card capacity.
So what is the maximum available bandwidth for the sizing drop down?
It can go all the way up to the size of the CXP. So let's say my CXP is 1 gig. I can go connect it up to 1 gig. If the CXP is 40 gig, I can go up to 40 gig.
Okay, so I have to ask now, what's happening within that VPC to create that connection? Because it doesn't sound like you're using a virtual gateway, because you would top out at the max of a virtual gateway, which I think is 2 gig. So what are you actually spinning up in that VPC or configuring in that VPC?
That's a good question. We don't spin up anything inside of the VPC. So let's say you as an app developer have deployed this VPC. When you look at your lens, all you'll see is a VPC attachment. What we would be doing underneath, if it's AWS, which it is in this case, is we spin up transit gateways inside of our account, and you have a cross-account VPC connect attachment to our transit gateway.
Okay.
And we manage all of the routing, all of the security, everything that's required. From your perspective as an app developer having that account, all you'll see is a VPC attachment to some TGW.
Right, and a route table entry sending my traffic.
Everything, all of the routing, and I'll show you when I do the more demo. All of the routing is controlled using this application across multiple clouds.
Okay.
So as a network admin, all I did is I picked a VPC, I picked the size, I picked the segment that I want in, I picked a micro segment that I want in, and I attached the billing tag to it. I don't need to know how networking is done inside of AWS. I don't need to know how networking is done inside of Azure. I don't need to know how networking is done inside of Google. That is done by Alkira.
So your magic sauce is really you live outside the VPC.
We live outside of the VPC, but we live in the cloud.
Okay.
We are born in the cloud company, deployed in the cloud company. So everything that we do is in the cloud.
If I just want to have 2 VPCs in the same region talk to each other, would you still want to use Alkira for that, or
it depends?
Your customers usually using peered VPCs or something else like a transit gateway for their single region VPCs, and then offloading to Alkira to go outside.
So in most cases, our customers connect to Alkira, and I'll tell you why. One is the centralized internet exit. They centralize a set of firewall, because whenever they want those VMs running and going to the internet, they want to go through a firewall. So in most cases, they will connect to Alkira, run a centralized firewall, and that's what I'm going to build. And essentially, they go to that. The other reason is consolidating on-prem connectivity. Whether you have remote users coming in, connecting to the workloads, whether you have branches, campuses, data centers connecting to the workload, you want to consolidate all of that. So for all practical reasons, you will build connectivity into Alkira. Now, if you have 2 VPCs that absolutely are just doing a backup of each other, and you just want a high throughput connectivity, no services, no outside world connectivity, we do offer that as well. So you can say that, these 2 VPCs, I just want them to talk. That's it.
Okay.
So we do offer that.
Cool.
But in most cases, they'll connect because of the services and all the other capabilities that.
Sure.
Okay, so we have added this demo script VPC. I'm going to say attach and select more, and I'm going to add one more VPC. So let's just call it, I have a shared services VPC. I'm going to pick that one. Put it in shared services. This is IT. Now you'll see there's a warning sign here, right? So we automatically detect what routes are already there, what's not there. And if you see that, it's essentially going to say that this subnet already has a default route. So you can just inject another default route there. It's not going to work. So what we do is we offer customers the ability to say what they want to do. Instead of a default route, I can propagate a custom route list. So in this particular case, I'm going to just say custom prefix, and I've again pre-created a custom prefix that is 10/8, right? So I'm going to leverage that, and I say I want to I don't want a default route going towards that VPC. I want a 10/8 route. And once I do that, that's pretty much it. So again, in a few clicks, what we have done is we have connected 2 of my corp IT workloads into the corp IT segment in a particular region. Now let's do one more thing. Let's add one line of business workload. So I'm going to go here, discover the same region, and I have a prod workload that is sitting in a line of business. So let's just search for prod. Again, same thing. This is my prod workload, line of business 1. I'm going to call it a production. And this is the line of business 1 cost center. Done. So we did single region, single cloud, multi-segment, all up and running. Now, if I click on that pending changes and provision, in less than half an hour, I have 2 global virtual colos, 2 line of business segments, multiple different apps, all connected and up and running. Now, let's say someone comes to me next and says, I have a workload in Azure. Can you connect to that? That's the most common scenario that we have seen, that typically a networking team has standardized on a cloud provider, and they are extremely reluctant to go to the second one because they have to redo the whole design. They have to create a blueprint, and then they have to redeploy that blueprint in the second cloud. And the amount of time that they spend to standardize the first, it takes a long time to do that again. So there's always a Heinzman shown to the line of business saying, I'm not going to do it, or I'm going to do it in 6 months or whenever I have time. But with Alkira, you can do it right away. So let's go to US East. Let's do Azure, right? Process and workflow is identical. All I have to do is select my Azure credentials. I'm going to pick East US. And you'll see that I have now, Alkira has discovered all of the Azure VNet for me. Same process. Let's say I have an inventory catalog app and I have a billing app, right? I'm going to pick those 2. Same concept. I'm going to pick a size. I'm going to pick a segment. I'm going to call it a production app. And this is my line of business 1.
When you drop down the sizing, the certain options grayed out. Why are they
correct?
grayed out?
They're grayed out based on the size of the CXP that's enabled. So as I said, you can only pick a connector size depending on the CXP size.
Right.
So it just shows that you can do all of this, but you are restricted based on the size of the CXP. Because if the CXP is limited to 1 Gbps, you can have a connector that's only 1 Gbps. If the CXP is 40 Gbps, you can go all the way to 40 Gbps.
Right. Okay.
So that we kind of protect the customer from making a mistake where the CXP is this, but the connector is that, and they constantly hit a policy where it just drops packets.
Right. Makes sense.
A quick follow-up question, because
Yes.
you said the CPXE is the backplane,
Correct.
chassis switch, and then VPCs.
Well, I was just giving a sample example,
Right.
but
No, it makes sense. But how do you control if I have too many VPCs and I add too much, or that I would overload the overall capacity?
you could do that. So let's say I'll give you a very simple example. Let's say I have a 500 or 1 Gbps CXP. I can add 15 VPCs. They are all 1 Gbps, right? This is based on how customers think that when they would have traffic. So at some point, customers have to understand what their network is, what their traffic patterns are, who needs to talk to whom, so on and so forth. But yes, you can oversubscribe and understand that not every VPC is going to, or every VNet is going to send that much traffic that is going to exhaust the CXP capacity.
But there's the danger that you will overload.
You could oversubscribe. Absolutely, you could oversubscribe.
Not fun days.
Yes.
So so when you're deploying a CXP, for example, what are the considerations for you? How do you select so that you don't run out of bandwidth, for example, or the options?
So typically you kind of think of this are hub locations, right? So let's say we have one of our large customers has 6 CXPs. Now all CXPs don't need to be the same size. They have very heavy in US East and US West, lighter in Europe and APAC. Now, so what they do is based on their needs and how many connectors they have, how much bandwidth do they need, they will pick a size of the CXP. So their US East is probably, I think, about 10 or 15 gigs. Their US West is about 5 gigs. And the Europe and APAC are 1 gig each. So depending on what you have in that region, you pick based on that.
Right.
Okay, so what we have done is multi-region, multi-cloud, multi-segment, all of that with a few clicks. So far, so good? Okay, I'm going to add now internet. All of these VMs need to go to internet. Windows update, Linux update, what have you, right? So I'm going to focus on US West now, and I'm going to add an internet exit. So let's just call it IT, US West. Let's just call it internet, corp IT. So essentially what we just did is we injected a default route. So now this gets advertised to all of the VPCs and VNets, and it all gets propagated, and they can access the internet. Now, what happens next? Security team comes in. We need to secure this internet, right? So we're going to deploy a firewall. Now, Alkira does offer a firewall itself, so you can do allow, deny based on phi tuple, based on applications. But in most of our current customer deployments, what we have seen is they are standardized on a vendor. So we offer multiple different vendors on our services. So I can deploy a Palo Alto, a Checkpoint, a Zscaler, ZIA connectivity, a Fortinet, what have you, right? I'm just going to pick Palo Alto as an example here. So now we're going to insert a firewall. So let's just deploy a firewall, right? And it does not mean that we need to do everything in the Alkira console. So what Alkira does is takes care of life cycle of the firewall, scaling up and scaling down, which is auto scaling, sending the traffic to the firewall on an as needed basis, and making sure its symmetricity is maintained. So if I need to go from a VPC1 to VPC2, whether it's single region or multiple regions, we'll make sure the traffic always hits the same firewall in forward and reverse direction. So now we're asking for panorama information. So these firewalls that come up can go connect to any panorama that's anywhere. It could be in data center, it could be in cloud, it could be anywhere, right? So a customer who has panorama with all of the policies pre-configured for their on-prem firewalls, they can leverage the same panorama to manage all of their cloud firewalls now.
Quick question on that. So because you said originally you integrated with Fortinet, for example, or Cisco ASA. So can I then, if I already have my policies written for the edge, right, and I don't necessarily as much policy writing is fun, I don't feel like redoing this, can you pull those policies into your dashboard? I can review them and then push them out to all my VPCs?
You don't even need to push them to your VPCs. Since VPCs connect into the Alkira fabric, Alkira takes care of sending the traffic that needs to go to the firewall to the firewall. So you don't even need to take all of those rules and push it anywhere. You can keep your rules in your panorama, and they will get inserted into the Palo Alto, and we will make sure that the right traffic will go to the firewalls.
Okay, so you don't really care about the firewall rules per se. You just redirect the traffic
Correct.
to my back to my firewall.
Correct. So I'm just going to pick, just put some basic information here. This is my panorama IP. Now we also offer multiple different licensing options. We offer, customers can bring their own license if they have negotiated a better rate with Palo Alto in this particular case, or they can consume it as a pay-as-you-go. I'm just going to pick pay-as-you-go right now. Just pick the firewalls. I'm just going to put registration pin. So this is all required for bringing up. Now I'm going to pick how many firewalls I want. Now I can say I want start with 1 or start with 2 or start with 4 and go to 8 or 10 or whatever, right? Alkira will pool all of the firewall capacity across all these firewall instances as one unit and scale up and scale down as it's needed. customers don't need to worry about anything. So I'm just going to pick 1 to 2. And I'm just going to put some dummy values since we're just building up a basic topology here. And this is where interesting stuff happens. This is where you pick your line of business segments that you have it in Alkira and map it to zones. And the whole security world knows, whoever knows Palo Alto Firewall knows the zoning concept. So we integrate those zones into the Alkira segments and map them. So all you would do is, let's just pick line of business 1. And you can do multi-segment as well. So we make sure that firewalls are multi-segmented as well. So you can pick all 4 segments or 3 segments or how many other segments you have and map all of them to a pool of firewalls. And we will make sure the traffic remains isolated, so the right traffic goes to the right firewall at the right time. Okay, I'm going to add a couple of zones here. Let's just call it unsecure zone. And actually, I had the internet as well. So I can add an unsecure zone here. And I can add a second zone, that is my intranet. And then I can just say this is my management segment. Again, the sizing, we talked about that. I can add them, and that's pretty much it. I'm ready to deploy.
Is there any way to view the firewall configuration so network engineers can look at it, read it, and?
Yes, absolutely. Right. This is a firewall that's running in our account, but engineers have full access to that because these firewalls are going to connect to Panorama. Panorama is going to push the security config. Customers can go into the firewall and they will see the tunnels that we have built, and they will have full access into that. Yes.
Okay. Is there any way to see those prior to committing changes?
Yes, you can see that as well. As soon as you commit is when we bring up the firewalls. So once the firewalls are up and they connect to a Panorama, the customers can see everything. Okay, so we added a firewall, and now I'm going to build the on-prem connectivity because we need to bring on-prem into that, right? So let's take Cisco SD-WAN as an example. Now, again, Alkira has built-in integrations into multiple SD-WAN vendors, Direct Connect, Express Route, IPsec, so on and so forth. I'm just taking SD-WAN as an example. Now, SD-WAN has its own segmentation. So we need to stitch that segmentation into the Alkira fab. So I'm just going to add SD-WAN US West, pick a version. And then all you need to do is drag and drop the cloud init file that SD-WAN has, right? So I'm going to pick the one that I already have, and let's call it Edge 1. And for redundancy, I'm going to deploy 2 of them. And this is where the magic happens of connecting the SD-WAN fabric or extending the SD-WAN fabric into the cloud. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to pick VRF 100 on the SD-WAN side and map that to my Corp IT segment. And then I'm going to say we're going to pick VRF 200 and map that to line of business 1. And then we are going to pick VRF 300 and map that to line of business 2. So now I have SD-WAN, 2 instances of SD-WAN, which are going to get deployed with 3 segments mapped to 3 of Alkira's segments. And once this network is up and running, the customers coming in or the users coming in through this SD-WAN fabric from branches, campuses, whatever the SD-WAN fabric is, they could get terminated into US West, and now they have access to whatever segments their applications are connected to. They can go through a firewall, they can go to the internet, you can regionalize your internet exit as well. So that's our basic topology.
I did want to ask, so if I'm currently using SD-WAN to connect my sites together, so I have, a few different remote offices and then a main office, and I'm using SD-WAN today to connect all those things together, would I then switch it over so all those remote locations are connecting into the Alkira network? Is that what you commonly see, or is it more, I'm going to leave what I have in place and then link into the Alkira managed network from my central site?
To be honest, it always starts with the latter, because they don't want to disrupt everything at one shot.
Right.
So they will start with like a hub node connecting to the Alkira hub, and then over time they will make a regionalized mesh. So let's say we actually have a few SD-WAN customers who had a full mesh across the globe. Now what they've done is they started by just connecting the hub nodes into Alkira at different hub locations, and now what they've done is they have regionalized SD-WAN. So SD-WAN was great at what it would do in terms of hybrid transport, right? Earlier we had MPLS, then SD-WAN came with hybrid transport. And in some cases, some of the customers went to internet only. Now, what they've realized is over time that internet across continents is horrendous. So now what they are doing with some of our customers is they are regionalizing SD-WAN and doing a full mesh connectivity directly to the hub, CXP, and then leveraging the CXP to CXP backbone that we have to go cross-continent. So you'll have a, let's say, a US West mesh, a US East mesh, Europe mesh, multiple APAC meshes, and all of them would be connected using CXPs and the high backbone. So that is how the journey is what we see. It's not that everything will become full mesh day one.
So you sit in the middle, right? So I have my SD-WAN there and SD-WAN there. And to visualize it, you're like the ring.
Correct.
Ring.
Correct. You can, yes.
In the middle.
Exactly.
As a transit node between SD-WANs.
That's right.
Interesting. Okay. Is there a plan or a thought to build your own SD-WAN solution as opposed to having to support all these other disparate ones that are out there?
So as a startup, we really need to focus on what we do and what we do good. So we have currently no plans of going to on-prem and deploying a hardware in a campus or a branch or anything. We want to make sure the cloud is easily accessible. So we would want to take CXP as close to the user and as close to the application as opposed to worry about building a hardware and sit in a branch location.
You might talk about this later, but I'm curious about the actual architecture that's linking all your CXPs together. In terms of, are you laying your own fiber? Are you leasing lines? Are you going through some of the more common carriers out there? I'm curious what that looks like.
So as I mentioned, we are a born in the cloud company. So we offer service only. So there's no software to download, no nothing. And we are fully deployed in the cloud, which means that we leverage the billions of dollars of investment that the cloud providers make on building that backbone.
Okay. So your actual CXPs are running in, say, AWS or Azure.
Correct.
I mean, you don't necessarily have to tell everyone which ones, but okay.
That's right.
And so you're using the backbones that they already
absolutely right. Yes.
Network traffic.
That's right.
Makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. As a startup, we don't have the billions of dollars to invest in creating a backbone or going through different ways.
Okay.
Your egress expenses must be crazy.
Yes, there are ways we tweak that, but yes, egress is egress.
Okay.
Well, on that topic with the egress fees, I mean, with what you have set up here, is that helping customers to avoid egress fees themselves directly?
They do. In many cases, they do. They do in terms of architecture. So there's a combination. You to play the game right in the sense that there is egress cost, and then there's deployment cost also, right? For example, in this particular case, I have a single CXP that's connecting to workloads in multiple clouds. Now, do I want to pay egress cost more, or do I want to deploy firewall in every single cloud in every single region? So you have to do a trade-off of what you want to do, how you want to do. And we have done this calculators enough times to guide the customers on what is right for them. But essentially, there's a trade-off that you need to make in terms of where you want to spend your money.
Okay, makes sense. Great, thank you.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I haven't shown so far is the ability to leverage the policy to stitch all of this together. I deployed an internet exit. I deployed my cloud workloads. I deployed my on-prem connectivity, and I deployed a firewall. What does that mean? Where does the traffic, which traffic goes to the firewall? Right now, the way I've laid out, there's no traffic going to the firewall at all. By default, firewall is not inline. So you have to apply a policy that says, take this type of traffic to the firewall. So let's say I have 2 on-prem locations. I have 2 cloud locations or 2 cloud providers, and then I have internet. So I have 5 traffic patterns. I have on-prem to on-prem. I have on-prem to cloud. I have cloud to cloud. I have on-prem to internet and cloud to internet. I have to make a decision as a network admin on what traffic I want to go through a firewall. So let's say I want to take all my traffic that's going to the internet through a firewall, but on-prem to on-prem, cloud to cloud, on-prem to cloud, I don't need a firewall. So I can do that because Alkira does not deploy a firewall inline. Not all traffic goes to the firewall. So let's do that, right? So I would add a policy here. And we have, again, multiple different types of policies. I'm going to focus on the first one, which is a traffic policy. You can do routing. We have very sophisticated routing capabilities. So you can decide what routes need to be advertised where and what routes don't need to be advertised. We take care of all of that. I talked about NAT earlier on how we handle that. In this particular case, I'm going to focus on traffic policy. Now, when I say traffic policy, I need to define a scope. So let's just say I'm just going to say, this is my 2 internet policy. And let's just pick line of business 1. And then I can pick what is my scope of the policy. In this particular case, since we said we want all traffic going to the internet, I can just pick any. We have the flexibility for the customers to either pick a single connector, either pick the microsegment group that we talked about. I can say prod apps can go to the internet, dev apps cannot, or dev can go, prod cannot. I can pick, I have that flexibility. So I'm going to just go and do simple. And I just say any to, I can say any to any, I want a firewall, or any to any particular one. I can just say any to this VNet needs to go through a firewall. I have a lot of flexibility built in there. And then I define a set of rules, which is what we call rule list, right? So I can just say apps to internet, and I can define a rule list. I can create as many rules as I want. I have pre-canned a few rules here. So I'm going to say all HTTPS traffic, I want to take it through a Palo Alto firewall. I can say drop all, and I can say drop not allowed apps. And then I can rearrange them. So here, Alkira is going to drop all the non-allowed applications. This could be 5-tuple based. We have an application catalog. You can pick applications from there. So you can pick and choose what applications Alkira will drop it themselves. Then you can say, I want all the HTTPS traffic to go through a Palo Alto firewall. And then I can say everything else just drop. So now I have in many ways right-sized my firewall. I'm only taking HTTPS traffic to the firewall. And again, we auto-scale firewalls, and we take the right traffic at the right time to the right firewall. So if I save this, let's just save this. And I'll save this policy. So now we have inserted the firewall. Earlier, we had just deployed a firewall in the network. Now we have inserted the firewall so that all HTTPS traffic going towards the internet will go through that firewall. So what we did, to summarize, we added 2 virtual colocation facilities of sorts, which is 2 CXPs. We added single cloud and multi-cloud. We added internet exit. We added on-prem. We added a firewall, and we stitched everything together. And we did that in about half an hour. And now if I deploy this in another half an hour, 45 minutes, the network would be up and running, global network. So that is what I wanted to give a demo today.
About cloud integration. So we're seeing that during cloud connection, you must provide YAML role or something like that, right? And the question is, are there a set of minimum policies you have to define on your cloud, your AWS account or Azure resource in order to establish this connection. So is there a documentation or an automation that can provide that for the customer?
Yes, absolutely. No customer in their sane mind are going to give us a write all permission. So we absolutely provide in our documentation, we provide our account ID, which you can map to, and we provide exact IAM role that they need to allow us.
No.
Yes. So
respecting the least privileges, right?
Exactly. So they have to give us a list of permissions and attach that to our account. So there's a cross account IAM role that they need to create and give us access. Absolutely. Same thing for Azure, same thing for Google. When we take the credential, we are very prescriptive on what we need. And actually in our documentation, we also specify, like if you want to do a direct connect, then we need a certain type of permission. If you don't want to do direct connect and just do SD-WAN or IPsec and just do the VPC side, we need a different set of permissions. So we are very prescriptive on absolutely what permissions we need because nobody wants to give a dime more than what we need.
I noticed a number of different firewall vendors there in your integrations, you know, Palo Alto, Fortinet, taking Fortinet, for example. Are you able to set global standards such as the following IPS settings, following AV settings, you know, the following web filtering? Can you define those and then manage them globally, where if you want to implement global changes, that can all be done in a single task?
Yeah, so what we do is firewall lifecycle, stitching the firewall, the auto scaling of the firewall, and taking the right traffic to the firewall at the right time. What we don't do is security policies inside the firewall, because every organization has a different set of security policies, and they have typically already predefined them in the security vendors management tool. So we don't take the security policy again and provision. We rather integrate the firewall into their management portal so that it automatically pushes the policies that are already defined.
Okay.
So we take care of all of the network stitching and sending the traffic and receiving the traffic and steering the traffic. We don't do security policies. We let the management portal that already has that leverage that.
That's fine. Obvious concern.
Correct.
Yeah. Thanks.